Hello, everyone. This is Matt, your local friendly gamer, and I know I've been kind of a little helter skelter with my schedule lately because holidays, and I've been trying to get as much kind of personal and professional freelance stuff done before the year is over. But it with the recent releases of a few expansions and games and stuff, I wanted to kind of get the ball rolling on some of my personal solo discussions. And the next one is gonna be definitely an interesting one because it's high time that I talk about a particular blue hedgehog. Yep, it's Sonic. So, Sonic and Pokemon were kind of like the first two kind of major gaming franchises that I really got into as I was growing up. Basically as early as 6 or 7, and then kind of went playing them pretty regularly until I was about approaching high school. And then high school I was kind of on and off with them. And then kind of middle to the end of college is when I really started getting back into both of those franchises again. So in Sonic's case, I think the first time that I've ever experienced playing a Sonic game was not only a side game, but it was a PC port of said side game that I think I got with my grandparents at a Sam's Club of all places, and that was Sonic R. Yeah, Sonic R was my first experience with the Blue Hedgehog. Now, to be fair, the first Sonic game came out literally a couple of weeks after I was born, so naturally speaking, my parents weren't gonna up and go get a Sega Genesis and a copy of Sonic, 1, 2, and 3. I was, trying to, learn basic things like walking, talking, eating, and, trying to make sense of, everything around me, let alone play a video game. In fact, I didn't even start playing video games until I was about to go into kindergarten, and that's when I got my Game Boy Pocket with Animaniacs game and the '94 Game Boy remake of Donkey Kong. So, I mean, at that time, I was just getting familiar with kind of playing video games in general, just playing those Tiger Electronic games, or those educational or licensed games that you would get at your Windows 95 and Windows 98 PC. And it was during those Windows 95 and Windows 98 days where I got the PC port of Sonic R. And I mean, I had fun with it, because, I was a kid and, kids didn't really know any better about various things. And it was, a thing I played in between, the Disney, kind of storybook, educational games, other, and other additional educational games, the Freddy Fish and the Treasure Island and stuff like that. Or just playing with kind of when you go to the control panel settings and you find all of the backgrounds and all the screensavers, and you just switch between those every now and then, and just endless hours of entertainment. I also did that with the earlier Apple computers that my grandparents had, especially when they had those After Dark backgrounds. Yeah, I was really addicted to those. And I mean, it also had games on there too. I think a Prince of Persia game, a wired frame kind of I think tank game, those vector graphics, and I think a variety of pinball games too. But yeah, for the most part, that was kind of how Sonic was to me for a while, because, I never thought to get a Dreamcast, I never thought to get a Sega CD, and I never thought to get a 32X, probably to the benefit of my parents, because, those things cost plenty of money, that's for sure. And I think I got really started getting very interested into Sonic proper when he started getting into his more modern 3D look. Now it was still pretty early on the 3D side of things, because Sega was still making consoles, but the Sonic Adventure games like really hooked me. There was just something about them, especially kind of like that kind of energy they had, just kind of really caught my interest, especially because I was very heavily on the Nintendo side of things. Barring like again, the average computer, Windows 95, Windows 98 computer game or arcade games, because I think the only Sega franchise that I kind of gotten familiar with, even though I really wasn't supposed to, was the House of the Dead series. And I mean, my dad played with me whenever I played those zombie rail shooter games. So he didn't really mind too much, I guess. But yeah, the Sonic Adventure games. And I had to play, and because I never really got around to owning a Dreamcast, I had to play like the Dreamcast like family friends or school friend would have. And I remember one of our family friends that like lived like kind of not too far from the neighborhood that we were at the time had a Dreamcast, and they had I think like kind of a nice handful of games. Sonic Adventure 2 was obviously the one that I played the most. There were also some other ones that part of me kind of wish I took advantage of, because I noticed that there was like the original Soul Calibur in there too, and that would have been pretty nice to try out at some point. But it is what it is. But yeah, and it did kind of suck that the Dreamcast didn't really last too long. Like by the time Sonic Adventure 2 came around, it was already kind of going out the door, and Sega was going to be a third-party software, gaming software company at that point. Just because, after the Genesis, they really, they had a habit of throwing stuff against the wall and hoping what would stick. And unfortunately, that's kind of how they kind of approached Sonic as well. In both kind of transitioning into 3D, hence, the common phrase of Sonic had a rough transition going into 3D, that phrase has been said to the internet and back, that it's like, man, can't find another way to kind of bring up that topic, or that era of Sonic, really. It's like you hear it so many times, you hear it so many times, so you really wonder, it's like, did they come up with that themselves, or did they borrow someone's notes, so to speak? I mean, I guess I shouldn't be too critical of that, because I every now and then I kind of catch myself kind of saying that as well, just because it's a very easy thing to bring up, basically. But I mean, and again, as someone who was like in grade school going into middle school, I didn't know Sonic had a rough transition into 3D. You could, it's just, I had fun with what I played, and that's kind of the approach that I kind of wanted to remind myself, because that's kind of how I enjoyed video games. But, kind of going back into Sonic, I would actually start owning my fair share of Sonic games. Ironically enough, when Sonic started releasing stuff for the Game Boy Advance and GameCube. Because in the West, we kind of saw like, Sega and Nintendo, Mario, Sonic as like fierce competitive rivals, that, it took every step they can to kind of just, give themselves like a 1-2 and try to get them, kind of like an edge over the other, But in Japan, Nintendo and Sega were actually kind of, chummy friendly buddies with each other. So in Japan, in the Japan mind of things, which is where both of these companies and both of their relative properties originated, it made sense for Sega to immediately partner with Nintendo once they weren't making their own consoles anymore. Where it's like, the rest of us in the West had like the biggest shock emoji on our faces, like, Sega's releasing games on Nintendo? What has the world come to? You know, that sort of thing. And again, you know, I didn't even know that that they were even that competitive with each other. Again, it's just like, I see other people play games, I get curious, and I hope, and you know, I want to play, you know, said game here or there, and it's just like, you know, it's like for as book smart was as I was as a kid, and kind of throughout my academic life, I could be pretty simple-minded and very easy to amuse at times, which you know, which made enjoying various games a lot easier for me, and you know, it also kind of made it easy for me to get stuck at various games too, because like classic Mario, I wasn't really making a lot of headway with classic Sonic when they started making them more available via collections on the GameCube. And I think it wasn't even until like the Sonic Origins collection that released not too long ago was when I actually finally was able to beat Sonic 1, 2, CD, and and 3 and Knuckles. And even just basic passing the game, not like collecting all the Chaos Emeralds or Time Stones and stuff. And which, I mean, yeah. But, you know, I'm kind of losing track as I kind of normally do, you know, hence the rambling part of wherever I'm pointing, like at where the banner is, you know, like that right there. So yeah, when the new ports of the Adventure games, you know, Sonic Adventure DX and Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. Well, I mean, Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was first, and then Sonic Adventure DX. And then kind of amidst all that, we had like the Sonic Classic Collection, where it has like a lot of this classic Genesis Sonic titles, as well as various, you know, kind of unlockable titles that you do by meeting like certain conditions, as well as some other nice extra stuff. And then the Sonic Gem Collection, which is basically like, you know, the Sega CD, Sega Saturn, you know, the kind of like a collection of all the side titles, which is actually how I was able to re-experience Sonic R that, you know, didn't occasionally have like a PowerPoint kind of frame rate, because again, you know, Windows 95, you know, that thing chugged like nothing else on a bad day. And it also had like, I think a bunch of, I think it also had the Game Gear titles, because, you know, you can also experience various Game Gear titles on Sonic Adventure DX when you earn enough emblems. As well as like a couple additional extra Genesis titles. But yeah, I was like fully aboard of Sonic Train. You know, I got the 3 Sonic Advance games, I got Sonic Battle, I got Sonic Heroes, I got Shadow the Hedgehog, and I got Sonic Riders. But I ended up kind of involving myself with like all of those games, you know, on a rather regular basis, kind of similar to how I did with the first 2 generations of Pokemon and various side titles, that I did eventually end up burning myself out. Like, I think the last game that I got was when I made the fateful decision to sell a good chunk of my childhood, Nintendo-based childhood, away to get a PSP. For whatever reason. One of the 2 games that I got for said PSP was Sonic Rivals. This was kind of released not too long after the infamous Sonic 06, which basically kind of tanked the franchise into nothing else, you know. And I think Sonic and the Secret Rings didn't really help matters either, because there was a point where development was kind of divided between those 2 games, so Sonic 06 definitely was a rather infamous title, especially since it was also an anniversary title as well. And I mean, there was already kind of a bit of a downward trend. Like, Sonic Heroes was definitely a lot of fun, but it wasn't nearly as good as the 2 Adventure titles. And it was also the first multi-platformer release, which also kind of had its own mixed results too, because the game was kind of originally made with the GameCube to coincide with the GameCube releases of of the two Sonic Adventure games. And then the ports to PlayStation 2 and Xbox, well, more so PS2, didn't really pan out nearly as well. And then Shadow the Hedgehog, it wasn't the kind of game that people really wanted out of Sonic, which is kind of weird because, especially with like follow-up interviews, the game was apparently made to appeal to a Western audience for some reason, completely negating the fact that the Sonic as it was already appealed more to a Western audience than Japan. So it really made no sense whatsoever with the direction they went, and I think they kind of realized that a little too late. Plus, it had like a very mission-based style format that, people didn't already like that about, a certain, team option in Sonic Heroes, and they kind of made the whole game, Shadow the Hedgehog, based around it, as well as kind of the story beats, which did not really help matters at all. And then, which then further led to Sonic 06 as both kind of like story-wise and the game being incredibly just undercooked overall, And then, that's kind of when people around that time kind of started to be a lot more critical and a lot more, kind of pushy with their hot takes in regards to the franchise as a whole, because the first game that they did following that as a means to kind of build the reputation of Sonic back up was Sonic Unleashed. And it came with like this werehog style of gameplay, and I think people were just kind of losing their patience. I mean, rightfully so, especially with how much of a bomb, Sonic 06 was, because that was the game to introduce Sonic to the HD platforms of, the 360, the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. And it really just didn't help things. I mean, nowadays there's definitely a lot bigger appreciation for Sonic Unleashed, and I can definitely say, and I can definitely confirm that as well, even though I still have yet to beat it, because the werehog and some of the other things in that game definitely have a lot of snags kind of tied to them. So I can understand where people may not still be down with the game. And there's also like a PS2 and Wii version that is also somewhat mission-based, but at least it handled kind of like the mission thing a lot better than Sonic 06 and even like Sonic and the Secret Rings did. So yeah, I mean, if they ever get around to re-releasing Sonic Unleashed, maybe taking qualities from both of those games in mind would be nice. At the same time, though, their record of porting their games, especially like the 3D titles, have been incredibly spotty. Because it was, I think, 2011, not too long after I got my PlayStation 3, when I actually decided to get back into Sonic with Sonic Generations. And around this time, Sonic has still been kind of making like good on its comeback with, a somewhat consistent handheld release with Sonic Rivals 2, the Sonic Rush games, Sonic Colors, both on the Wii and the Nintendo DS. And Sonic Generations for the 20th anniversary definitely was like a nice kind of way to show everyone Sonic is back. He's as good as it's ever been. We have like a new 3D game that has like, all the Genesis levels with classic Sonic, as well as modern takes of, those levels with modern Sonic, and the reverse when we get to like the more modern levels. And, Sonic Generations was definitely a great game for me to like jump back into. And then after that, especially when I eventually got my like Wii U and 3DS, it also gave me the opportunity to try some of the games that I've been kind of missing out on, when I kind of had my little break with the series. And I mean, I'm still following the series to the best of my ability, because I mean, after Sonic Generations and, people are like, yes, Sonic is back. Sega, for whatever reason, decided to get a little experimental again with Sonic Lost World. And, the Wii U title is fine, not the best, but still all right. The 3DS version of it, yeah. And I think that was also the one that I started with, too, because, at the time that came out, I was starting my graduate year as part of a 5-degree program that my college was offering. And I was doing internships out in Los Angeles. So I'm not even sure if I even had a Wii U at that point. I only had my 3DS. So I had to wait until I got the Wii U for like the holiday season and have Sonic Lost World be one of the earliest games that I got for it. And then after that, Sega just kind of started going all over the place again. They had that Sonic Boom television series and tie-in games to that, and the tie-in games didn't really work out so well. And then, it just kind of got a little bit quiet because, the only thing that Sonic kind of brought to the table, kind of in between were mobile apps like Sonic Dash and Sonic Runners, which unfortunately I think Sonic Runners, as it was introduced, it was really good, and then they decided to stop service, and then I think they released kind of a spiritual successor app that wasn't really as good. So nowadays you're kind of better to stick with Sonic Dash. Especially since it's now also available on Apple Arcade if you are ever even interested in Apple Arcade. They also just released an exclusive game to that called Sonic Dream Team, made by the same developers. And Sonic 4 was also a thing, and it's it was okay when it was out, but then as the years came by, it just didn't age as well. And I mean, that's kind of another thing. It also kind of got to the point where a lot of people kind of realized, the more time has passed, the more that, certain Sonic games just haven't been able to kind of come off as fun as they used to. And again, it didn't really help that Sega didn't really, keep the quality of the games intact, sometimes with their ports. For example, for as really good as the DX and Battle ports of the Avenger games were, when they tried to release them again for the PS3, Xbox 360, and Steam, it came with so many snags, especially the Battle one. Avenger 2 Battle 1. It's just what happened? The same thing could be said for Sonic Colors Ultimate when they tried to re-release that for the Switch, and I think it was also on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and Steam, and it's just man, it's so you really have to slap Sega sometimes, I guess, and maybe to a lesser extent Sonic Team as well, but usually Sega. And I mean, a lot of these kind of sentiments I kind of have for Pokemon too, especially recently. But it's I really did feel especially because for a good long while, Sega, with a few exceptions, was focused exclusively on Sonic. Whenever they weren't just simply publishing, another game made by another studio, or the couple other, franchises and stuff that they kind of regularly kept on, which I think the biggest two that they kind of had, a bit of a regular output in addition to Sonic, where I think the Yakuza series and the Hatsune Miku rhythm games. I think those were the only two series that they regularly kept on with alongside Sonic. Everything else was a licensed property, or something made by one of their partner studios, which even their partnerships with studios was kind of on and off. which is kind of wild now that they've not only acquired Atlas, they've also acquired the Angry Birds studio. I think Rovio, I think their name was. So, I mean, yeah, that's wild. But I think especially when they kind of were doing the whole throw everything into the wall and see if it sticks with Sonic, and it started kind of getting like various diminishing returns, especially when they tried to put in the whole nostalgia aspect. Because it worked definitely well for Generations, but then again, Generations was an anniversary title. Same with Mania, you know? And the thing with Mania is that a lot of people were praising the original levels a lot more than the kind of the new take on a lot of the classic levels that team did, which, interestingly enough, Mania was made by a team of people that started out making various ROM hacks. You know, which kind of made it a bit crazy that, you know, when Mania came out, people loved it, and then when Forces, the 3D title that was supposed to celebrate the 25th anniversary alongside Mania, came out, it was very, very like, it didn't suck, but it also wasn't as good as a lot of the kind of a lot of the Sonic titles that we kind of grew to love, you know? That's the thing with Sonic's. It's either really good, kind of good or meh, or really bad. Be it like a main title, a port, a side title, what have you. It's just, you know, especially because Sonic has been like their mascot character. They've just been doing whatever, hoping that it does well, even when it's like at some point someone should have really kind of stopped them and be like, you know, maybe we should have checked, you know, for, you know, this or this, you know, making sure that this works, you know, making sure that this can be seen as enjoyable and fun to fans. And it's just like, you know, you have to kind of wonder what goes on in their quality control department sometimes. And I get it, you know, as someone who is hoping to get back into game design myself, I understand making games isn't easy. It's not easy. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and not only do you have to make sure that the game is fun, you also have to make sure it works properly. And for a game that is centered around going as fast as possible and doing all sorts of quick reactionary, you know, platforming, there is a lot you have to make sure to get right. But it's like but it is one of those things where it's like you also have to kind of ask yourself, well, if there are plenty of ROM hackers that can get various, you know, things about the Blue Hedgehog right with kind of their own interpretations of it, why is the company behind him still struggling so much? You know, and I mean, not for nothing, Sega and, you know, the Sonic team are very receptive to what, you know, the fans kind of expect out of the Blue Hedgehog. Now, granted, that comes with its own kind of problems, because I swear there's like a huge portion of the fan base that doesn't even know what they want, you know, at times, you know. That is also a thing that's been kind of tied to the franchise in general, is that Sonic has a very vocal fan base. Now, granted, we live in the year 2023 where not only every fan base, but also every sort of opinion has like a very vocal, you know, a very vocal output, as well as various platforms to kind of receive and broadcast that output out thanks to social media. But I mean, Sonic was definitely one of the earliest in that kind of regard, before it started becoming commonplace with like everything. And yeah, especially because they especially because with Sega and Sonic Team experimenting with so many different like ways to kind of have like a Sonic game. You have various people who, they entered the franchise at different points, therefore they have different preferences of what they expect from future Sonic games. Like, you have the audience that prefers the original classic Genesis style games, and then you have people that are more into the adventure style games, which is kind of like, the early 3D of Sonic. And then you have people that are into the more quote-unquote modern games, which is, was kind of kicked off with Unleashed, where it kind of was like a mix of 2D and 3D. And, it also kind of created what has been dubbed the boost to win formula, which is, there's a button for Sonic to go faster with a certain amount of boost meter, and that's how you kind of get your speed, as opposed to, doing very specific platforming and in a very explorative stages. And if you want your speed, you try to like work with like the physics of the game, or get like a quick boost like via Sonic's patented spin dash. And now we have Sonic Frontiers, which was able to bring Sonic into a more open world kind of setting. So it's kind of like a postmodern sort of deal, where it's like there is like a lot of exploratory, like open world adventure-esque deal, but then there's also plenty of moments where you kind of boost around, kind of like, the Unleashed Colors and Generations era. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot to take in, and the Sonic, kind of multiverse sort of thing, because yes, there's been all sorts of media associated with Sonic. You have media as you have the original kind of Sonic universe as portrayed in the games, which, I mean, has its own kind of scattered lore all over the place. Then you have like, various TV shows. Like, there were like kind of like the early, adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and, and, a lot of the kind of earlier Sonic cartoons. Then you have Sonic X, which is kind of loosely based around like the adventure titles, as well as like with an original story and stuff. And it, I liked it at the time, but I probably wouldn't see myself going back to that one. Then you have Sonic Boom, and now we have Sonic Prime. And then there's like, 2 serializations of comics. You have the Sonic Archie series, which again is all over the place and kind of has its own brand of infamy a little bit. And then we have like the very ongoing and recent and current IDW run of Sonic the Hedgehog comics, which I've been kind of wanting to get into for a bit. Just like I kind of at some point want to check out the Sonic Boom and Sonic Prime series. I mean, I do have a Netflix through my family account via my family, so I could check out Sonic Prime whenever I want. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot to take in, from like kind of like the various universes of kind of like the Sonic lore, to all of the stuff that goes on via each era of, the games, both console and handheld. There's also, stuff from the original stuff from the fan base too, which, can either be, very endearing, very cool, or very, very cringy and cursed, and oh my god, why did I see this sort of thing, And I could say this of any franchise, really, and a lot of my feelings are kind of similar to, Sonic to Pokemon, because those are the 2 series that I've kind of grew up with. But yeah, I mean, I think just for the most part, as someone who is, only a little bit older than the Sonic franchise itself, try to take everything as it kind of comes along, and always try to be kind of like a bit of a mediator, because it's like I can see why this certain aspect of Sonic is good and this certain aspect of Sonic may not be as good, and really when it comes down to it, with Sonic or any other game or gaming franchise, it's just like, if I can still have fun with it, that's all that matters, I could still find that as both time and money well spent, because there's something that I could still enjoy from the franchise, even when it can outright frustrate me at times. I think kind of my latest case of frustration was when, if you have been following kind of, the rather infrequent posts of Discord that I make at my own Discord channel, the Final Horizon DLC was something that I really wanted to like a whole lot in Sonic Frontiers. And I still think that there was a lot of good that was done with that DLC, but there was also so much about it that made it incredibly frustrating that I felt like it was just a miracle that I was able to finish it. It's like, I mean, there was so much about the game that was kind of a little on shaky ground, but you can kind of tell that, given enough time and focus, it could be polished out rather well for future titles, which is something that has been kind of a common pattern with Sonic, where it's like the first attempt of something is always going to be very rough around the edges, but if there's still fun to be had and still something that could be taken from it into future titles, it can be polished into games that can really, really, really be good. And then by the time they get to that point, then they completely drop all the progress they have and experiment with something else. That, and I have to also bring up again, it's like they have a really trouble porting, stuff, from the infamous Sonic the Hedgehog 1 on the Game Boy Advance, to, the hiccups that they made with their modern games like Sonic Adventures 1, 2, and Colors. It's just like, it really baffles me that like no one, that for all the lessons that the development team and, well, I guess not so much the publishing team, because I think the publishers over at Sega, they don't really give a crap unless if it makes some money, It's just, that's why they've been kind of ignoring most of Sega's other franchises until very recently, because it's like, it's Sonic, people will buy it anyway, and then they see all these videos of people, being rather cranky and, kind of, being hypercritical, and, then, Sega loses money, and, and they're like, oh shoot, we really got to do something about it. See, it isn't until Sega themselves are at the decline that they actually do something about, when it comes to quality control over their own properties, especially with Sonic, and it's just frustrating that it's like, yeah, they learned their lesson for now, and then they go and make boneheaded moves with Sonic anyway, That is really the thing. It's that for all of the missteps and pitfalls that Sonic had to go through, it's like all it would have taken is one or two of those instances for like most franchises to be on like a hiatus for like decades before something comes from them again, And here comes Sonic, having like one or two really good games and then have like a mixture of like bad to mediocre games, or games that are overall good but are riddled with various problems that you have to kind of wonder just what the heck they're doing over there. And I think that was also the case with Sonic Superstars too, where it's like, it's what Sonic 4 should have been, but then they also kind of made quite a number of goofs with that as well, And it's just like, what are you guys doing? And again, most of my ire is towards Sega, because I know at the end of the day, the developers have to work with what they're given, whether it's budget, whether it's like a time frame or something like that. Again, something that I will echo very much when I get to Pokemon, hopefully soon. But it's like sometimes, even on the development side, you just gotta slap them a bit. It's like, what the heck were you guys doing? Like, I think the thing, people didn't think that Sonic Frontiers was going to be as good or even decent as it ended up being. For like, when they revealed like the first sort of trailers and gameplay for it, and it just really didn't show the game in positive light at all. And it's just like, and then when they were showing more, it's like, oh wait, this game could actually be good. And it's like, what are you guys doing over there? But yeah, it's like, I know I'm kind of touching the same points over and over again, but it's like there are plenty of times where the franchise, at least from a gaming perspective, runs around in circles a lot, you know? I mean, as an overall media, property, Sonic has been hanging in there, They've been doing pretty well, especially at times when they tend to fall short a little bit, because again, they constantly have like, a serialized comic book or TV series. And I mean, and even though the initial reception didn't go over so well when the first movie was being revealed by Paramount, that the visual effects team worked double time to kind of basically start again from scratch and make Sonic look like Sonic. They started out with a more photorealistic approach, and it was not good at all. So, but then they actually kind of made him, more of the cute little hedgehog that also can sport kind of a bit of an attitude at times, and and it ended up being something that people really liked. I actually went to see the first movie with my girlfriend, and that was our first Valentine's Day date. I mean, she ended up kind of liking it too, even though she doesn't really follow Sonic at all. But she went because I really wanted to see it, and we saw the sequel together too, and we'll probably see the third one together as well. So, but yeah, especially when there's still so much that it can be very near and dear to my heart regarding the franchise, and especially when stuff like, the Sonic Symphony came about, it's just like, man, that hit me so hard. I was just like, man, this is just great. Having a combination of both the orchestral music as well as the live rock performances, it was really nice, And apparently that symphony, is still like, on tour. So, with any luck, I would definitely like to see like a live showing of that, But I mean, for now, it's like, a lot of the Sonic music is available on like your music streaming services. And there was a time where I would blast, the Sonic Adventure 2 soundtrack on my CD and just like rock out like stupid, and I mean, and I guess that hasn't really changed much, because every now and then I have like a vocal track from Frontiers, and I just do like a crazy headbang, like whenever I need like a breather in between projects and stuff. So, and I mean, for as much of a mess as Sonic, excuse me, I just had lunch. For as much of a mess as Sonic can often find himself in, it's still a mess that I still have a whole lot of appreciation for. And I still would look forward to whatever the Hedgehog has next, even if it didn't end up being as good as it could have possibly have been, There's just so much, a lot of charm and fun that, young, like the young 90s kid in me, just instantly gravitates toward. And again, there's a lot that I could mimic in saying to various other games and franchises, especially Pokemon. But I mean, for all of the stumbles and all of the stupid, cringy hot takes and counter hot takes that fans and detractors will post on the internet for the end of time, it is a franchise that I am very thankful for and can credit a lot to my current tastes in video games. And that's really all I have to say. And I haven't even really scratched the surface of all of what goes about in terms of the series. I mean, I've just been kind of speaking of stuff about the franchise as a whole, because, there's a lot of other things to go into, like, how Sonic became an iconic hero, how Dr. Eggman became an iconic villain, all of Sonic's friends throughout all of the various points of media. That's also another kind of talking point that I do also feel has been run to the ground a little bit, is whether or not, insert Sonic friend here should be part of the franchise, or stuff like that, and it's just like, at some point it's like, guys, can you really just let people have fun? I mean, it's like the entry point of the series is still marketed for kids, and, well, yes, just because something is marketed for kids does not have an excuse for, like, any sort of lack of quality in terms of the games or any sort of story elements. The point of the matter is, it's just, it's like, it really doesn't pay to be like a sour old curmudgeon that at points, it's just like, just let people have fun, It's like, the franchise is still around for a reason, and it's because, in spite of it all, there is still a lot to enjoy, both unironically and ironically, about the Blue Blur, about everyone's favorite little speed demon, and that's probably the best that I could say about, kind of where Sonic fits in nowadays. It's like, in spite of everything that has happened, from, like, the rough transition to 3D to kind of the modern conundrum of what exactly to do with him nowadays. It's just, in spite of everything, there's still a lot to like about Sonic the Hedgehog. So, with all of that said, this is Matt, your local friendly gamer. I hope you have yourselves a wonderful day. I'll try to get as much of kind of my end of the year stuff as possible so that we could start the next year as strong as possible. But until then, take care and see you later.